Okay, so Overwatch 2 has a bit of an armor problem. We need to talk about it. Hi everybody, my name is Abby. Welcome to the video. I appreciate you coming out here, sitting down with me and talking Overwatch. As always, you are looking absolutely gorgeous, handsome, dashing, beautiful today. And I want you to be proud of yourself because you are that damn good. But you know what isn't that damn good? It is the state of armor. We need to talk about it. So armor is a bit of a mess right now. Arguably, D.Va is the biggest beneficiary, and right behind her, I think a character that's being slept upon is Orisa. I think Orisa's been benefiting indirectly from a lot of the nerfs that have been coming into the game, but nobody's talking about it because Winston and D.Va especially are sticking out like sore thumbs from the tank role. So why is that the case? Let's discuss it. Let's do a quick summary to why D.Va, Winston are feeling really strong. Now, there was the tank patch that came out a while ago, which the whole idea was to increase quote-unquote tankiness, which is a new metric that they called within their, like Blizzard Team 4 likes to call the balance team, within their own little circle that, hey, what if we increase the tankiness of characters in order to make them feel better? Now, something that needs to be understood, this is something in my opinion, I personally feel that it's not like tank is bad to play. The first and most important pain point in tank is the tank role is the only role where an attention division cannot happen. Right? I think this is really important. We need to understand when you're fighting DPS, there's two of them. You can sometimes run into a 2v1, a 2v2, a 1v1, etc, etc. Same thing with support, right? And because of that, you also have a variety of abilities and cooldowns from each of those roles that can have a different type of impact upon the game. Whether, depending on what it is, some of them can set up for success, some of them is for denial purposes, some of them is for movement, the list goes on. My point here is that because there's two of them, there's like a dynamic, an interesting way of approaching the game that, okay, well, we have, let's say, an Ashe and a Pharah. Pharah is going to go do this, so she might take the attention of the enemy team to look up at the sky. Ashe is going to be poking from mid, so they're also going to have to pay attention to both of these different angles. The problem with tank is you only have one tank, and the easiest thing to do, sometimes why it feels really easy to do in order to counterpick, to make a play on a tank, like from tank to tank matchup basis, is it is extremely one-dimensional. That's the problem when you only have one character or one character per role on each side, is the roles fundamentals in terms of how they approach and fight each other become really simplified, dumbed down, and also, this is something really important, they become very accessible. It is really, really easy to get somebody to understand the rock, paper, scissors of tank nowadays. It's really not as complicated as a lot of people make it want to sound like it is. Because like I got like a lot of new people into the game, like from my work and everything, and they're enjoying Overwatch for what it is, and they agree that there's some pain points in the game. However, the easiest thing that they were able to learn and do in the game was the tank counter swap game. Now, how does that relate to armor? I'm getting there. Give me a moment. Now, coming back to armor, let's talk about that. The problem with armor being a part of this tankiness buff that they wanted to do was that they fundamentally didn't understand what wasn't making tank feel good. And again, I've spoke about this in previous videos, and I think I spoke about it just now too, was the idea of attention division. Because there's like two in a role, it's easier to divide, like, okay, I took a couple of cooldowns and damage, she took a couple of cooldowns and damage, now we can kind of do our own thing. Tank being on the sole receiving end of that, no matter how tanky you make them, well, it will always feel bad, right? It doesn't matter whether they do die or they do not die. The fact that you're being thrown a lot of things upon, and it's easy to just to be bombarded upon by other players, this is a feeling that will always feel bad. But that's kind of what the tank role is like. That's the whole point. Like, you're a tank, there is a part in your kit that's meant to be quote unquote tanky and kind of help you survive. Now, if you're feeding, that is another thing. Like, you're gonna die if you're feeding. Even nowadays, you get like all these Winston players going for like the 1v5 dives, and they just die because they don't understand how to stage their dives. So it is what it is. Same with D.Va players. But the problem with armor is, I think armor is overtuned, and this was most likely done to make up for the bad players upon the tank role, rather than actually understanding how to tackle the problems in 5v5. I think that there is just nothing you can do fundamentally to change the tank pain points in the 5v5 format, which is two things. First and foremost, the attention division that isn't there. Like, tanks are forced to take a lot of the attention first and foremost because big burly target, easy to shoot, etc, etc. Number two is how easy it is to counter swap on that role. These are just two things that cannot be solved unless you move to 6v6, or unless you introduce some form of hero lock system where, okay, you pick this character, you cannot get off of this character. Now, you're still going to have counter swap situations, as in, oh, if I exited on D.Va, they came out on Zarya. Well, that Zarya is probably going to have a favorite matchup, but that's a whole different can of worms. My point is that you cannot solve this with balance. It's something that really does have to be approached from the perspective of the format change. And we know 6v6, at least a test of it, is still a couple of months, or I think even half a year away, which is really depressing when you think about it. Regardless, we're stuck with this format, so what can we do to make it feel better again? First of all, I think Tank was already beginning to feel better even before the Season 9 changes. Arguably, people were saying that Tank should be the only role that doesn't get the, at the time, the 15% heal reduction of the DPS passive. They should instead get like 10% or something like that. The problem is Blizzard implemented all of these changes in one patch. Not only did tanks get like the 10% heal reduction after the heal reduction went up to 20 on everybody, and now on tank it's 10%. Alongside that, tank also got the tankiness changes, which was like armor got pretty strongly buffed. And at the same time, what else got changed was like each character, one way or the other, got their like the power in their kit even stronger, right? So for example, like Ram's punches damage went up, Ryan's fire strike I believe went up, D.Va's micro missiles got gigabuff, and that was all to account for the tank versus tank matchups, because it's like, okay, well, the breakpoints are going to be a problem. Now, the one thing that maybe Blizzard was short-sighted about was they didn't understand what it was going to feel like on the receiving end of the squishies. So DPS and supports are squishies. What was it going to feel like when 75 damage Ramatra returns and is like punching you down, right? Like, why does Ramatra get to have his breakpoints back, but we cannot do the same for Genji and Tracer, right? Like, these are pretty high skill ceiling heroes. It's not like everybody can access them, etc., etc. So, coming back over to tank again, the best thing that we can do for armor is revert it to what it used to be, and I'm open-minded to allowing tank abilities to have a little bit of strength. I don't think something as armor, which is something that a tank player needs no control or agency over, other than just staying alive and playing in their support's line of sight and using cover. Outside of that, they don't have to do anything to manage their armor, right? Like, it's just something like you just be smart and like kind of, you know, keep in the back of your mind that, okay, if I'm just managing this well, stepping out the way when I need to, I'm going to be fine and I'll feel like I'll never die. And I think that's too easy. Well, you know, like back in the day when you were playing D.Va, you had to be really careful with where and when and how you were using your defense matrix in order to not only stay alive, draw out fights, but also bring the pressure that the character could. Nowadays, it feels like you can genuinely ignore the state of your HP and armor bar and just kind of run it down mid and do whatever you want. The same can be said about Ram, Reinhardt, and even in some cases Orisa, where, okay, I'm not gonna lie, like maybe it's just me. I don't know, you guys can tell me in the comments too, but personally, I think Orisa's starting to come back. Like, with the way armor is right now, the hilarious thing is because D.Va and Winston are so strong, Orisa's going under the radar. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I've been traumatized by Orisa games lately. She can feel really difficult to deal with. So, the number one thing I want to do is nerf armor. I can't sugarcoat it. We need to nerf armor. It doesn't make the game feel good. It exaggerates the tank's problems, because what happens is when you have tanks that are staying alive more than the other people and they have better damage than most other characters, you have now made the problem with the tank role worse, because it just further emphasizes the fact that the game really is just coming down to a tank diff. That, okay, well, do we have the better super tank or do they have the better super tank? Is our one living longer or their one living longer? Is our one making the play? Is their one making the play? Because it can feel really difficult to get through some of these super tanks right now. Winston and D.Va, you know, these are very strong. Now, Winston did get a nerf, but I would argue that's not where Winston needed the nerf. Winston's bubble changes and primal race changes were completely unnecessary. Okay, I think Winston was actually one of the most feared tanks in the game, and we really are in a world now where Winston got nerfed. So, armor needs a nerf. D.Va's micro missiles may need to be reverted, because I think it's a bit too much. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts below. How do you feel about the current state of armor? What do you think needs to be done to improve how we're interacting with armor and just tanks in general? Because I think, again, the DPS to support interactions with each other and one another per role doesn't feel that bad. There's certainly some outliers, don't get me wrong. There's some outliers for sure. But it's like, it's enjoyable. Like, when I'm playing the game now, I'm like, okay, I can deal with this, but the moment I'm starting to interact with tanks that have armor upon them, it just makes me feel like, why am I playing this game? Like, this is like the only game where shooting at something can make me feel like it's a bad thing. I've played a lot of shooter games, so I don't know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and comments down in the comment section below. With that being said, I'm going to be concluding the video over here. Also, side note, thank you so much everybody for coming down to the live stream where we played the 6v6 pugs. I'm going to try to be doing that more often if you guys enjoyed it. It's going to be a little bit every now and then because I'm very busy in real life. But outside of that, thank you so much for always supporting this channel and helping it grow, even if it's at a glacial pace. But regardless, I appreciate all of you that have stuck around. With that being said, thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you guys in the next one.